when did he write his treatise? When did he write the law? What year was that?
His most well-known, first, Frederick Bastiat was a French economist, philosopher, and journalist. He wrote a lot about things going on in France and in the world at the time, and he wrote and published the law. His most well-known essay. It's not really a book. It's not really all that long.
Okay.
In 1850, and so this is 10 years. And he died in 1850 as well. He died pretty young. So this is 10 years before the Civil War in America. This is a couple years after the great revolutions in Europe. This is a couple decades after the last French Revolution. So he's writing a very tumultuous political and social time in world history.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So he writes this. This is well after the founding of America in the 18th century, where you had another Frenchman, Alexis de Tocqueville, come over and say, "Hey, man, you guys got something. You guys got something you're doing right over here." So what are his motivations? What is his motivation for writing this book, The Law? Obviously, there's probably some societal problem he's speaking out against in writing this, right?
Yes, sir. So you mentioned Alexis de Tocqueville. Bastiat was, as many others were, influenced by Tocqueville's writings. Tocqueville was a French diplomat who visited America in just a couple decades before Bastiat's writings. And Tocqueville argues that in the United States, the form of government works because of the culture of the people. He sees the United States as truly this great Republican experiment that is going to work because of our Constitution and because of the people who make up the polity. So Bastiat, who, remember I said, is writing in the wake of great cultural revolution in Europe, with the first major growth of socialism and communist thinkers, both in government and the academy, Bastiat is arguing that if you really want the protection of life, liberty, and property, what we set out in our founding document in the Declaration of Independence, you do not look towards the state or socialism and communism or protectionism. You look towards the people, and you look for less of the state. Bastiat believed that the United States in 1850 was the foremost country in the entire world to offer individuals the protection of life, liberty, and property. And he saw this through limited government.
Life, liberty, and property. And that is really where, let's focus on the property aspect, because in this segment, brought to you by Conduit for Commerce, go to conduitforcommerce.org. They're putting Arkansas small business first. If you don't have property rights, you can't ever own your business, right, Hunter?
No, you're right, Paul.
So, talk about Frederick Bastiat's the truths that he spoke those many years ago concerning property rights.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that when you were speaking right before I came on about Thanksgiving in the United States. Well, the pre-United States.
Yes.
And you spoke about Governor Bransford's declaration. They realized soon on that socialism was not working for them. In the winter of 1609, 1610, it was known as the Starving Times. Nearly half of all of everyone in Jamestown and Massachusetts Bay colonies, but especially Jamestown, had an incredibly rough winter, and half of them died. They even resorted to cannibalism at some point. And there were no private property rights in the very beginning of our history as colonies. So the food lot was shared. This is known as the commons. Animals could graze freely. Everyone was to share the corn and pumpkins and everything else that was grown, all the fish that was caught, all the game that was killed was mutually shared within the community, communism or socialism. Now, when no one owns the rights to their own property, there is no profit motive there. It's what we see and what we call the tragedy of the commons. So, as happened in Jamestown, in the Massachusetts Bay colonies, and other places throughout history, whenever a community shared a general plot to let all of their animals graze on, known as the commons, no one felt any sort of, and there wasn't because they shared it, any sort of move or push to take care of the common ground. So all of the animals that were on it, that were supposed to be getting fed equally, they were eating up all the grass. They were getting skinny. And then, the ground turned into hard pan and it could no longer grow grass and it just ruined the land. But if you were to divide up the land, as started to happen in 1610, 1611 in our colonies here in the Americas, to each their own, if one person fails, then not everyone has to go down with them. And if you don't take care of your property, it's not everyone else's fault. However, if you feel much more incentivized to take care of your own private property, then other people do to take care of yours. So you could really let your sheep eat all day. But if you didn't monitor your sheep's eating, then you'd run out of grass.
Yes.
But you wanted to take care of your grass so your sheep could get nice and fat. It's the simple rights to property that drive profit motive and pride and ownership. We still see this today.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
The right to property, is the right to property a creation of government?
No. No, it is not. And Bastiat argued that it was not a creation of government. Bastiat, in fact, one of his most well-known quotes is, it is not because men have made laws that personality, liberty, and property exist. On the contrary, it is because personality, liberty, and property exist beforehand that men make laws. Bastiat believed that the fundamental and preeminent duty of government was to protect the personal property of individuals. It should do very little else, he argued, because if it did do that very little else beyond that, he believed you'd be reaching into the realm of legal plunder, where a government might do something for the will of the majority that if one individual did to another would be plunder, would be illegal. And he said, if any government does that, then the law or the institution is to be abolished immediately. We cannot have legalized plunder. So government's duty is to protect the private property of individuals. And evidence and historical analysis suggests that associations and these mutual associations, these governments were set up amongst men to protect that. Government does not give us the right to private property. This is an innate, natural occurrence.
That is an excellent answer, Hunter. We're talking with Hunter Rivett. He's interning right now for Conduit for Commerce. You can find out more at conduitforcommerce.org. They're putting Arkansas small business first. Legal plunder. Small business in general. I mean, in this country today, Hunter, they're subjected to legal plunder all the time, aren't they?
Yes. If you live in the United States today, which on the economic front, we are making progress, do not doubt. But if you include every form of legal plunder, that is a taxation, that is fines, that is fees, that is regulations, that are negatives on your personal economic development, you're going to pay anywhere from 30 to 60% of your property, and your income, your wealth, it is, of course, part of your property. Bastiat argued that as well. You're going to pay 30 to 60% of your property in the form of legal plunder. Now, if all of that money, if all of that wealth, if all that capital was used by individuals to better their own property and inadvertently, as we spoke of before, others, just imagine the economic trajectory of our country.
Yes, but then you got the left that says, "But you're just being greedy, Hunter." And this is the same left that would argue that once you enter public service, and not private service, you enter public service, all of a sudden your motivations and intentions and human nature is perfected. Now you're an angel above reproach. You know, that to me is the hypocrisy there.
Right. And
let me ask you this: you're a millennial. How old are you, Hunter?
I'm 21.
21 years old. So take heart, listening audience. He's 21 years old. Listen to his grasp the idea of to be able to grasp these concepts. So, yeah, I mean, it really is quite encouraging. Just talk a little bit more. What I interrupted you. What were you going to say, Hunter? And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I am 21, and I've met people older than me that have said incredible things about socialism and government. That they think some people should be able to vote away their rights. What an absurd notion that Bastiat fought against all the time, especially the notion that capitalism was greedy. In a free capitalist, free market economic system, which the U.S. has not really ever touched. We have a history of cronyism. We have a history of government subsidies. We basically beyond 1812, we have veered further and further away from free market capitalism, and we've had more of a pseudo-socialist cronyism model.
So, as a millennial hunter, sorry, my microphone. As a millennial hunter, how do we get through to your generation? How does that happen? How do we take these concepts? Because it seems like your generation really does think once we get into public service, you know, there's just this enormous amount of confidence in people if they're in government, and this enormous amount of skepticism if they own their own business. Talk about that.
The simple fact is, capitalism is not greedy. Socialism is very greedy. So in capitalism, and people my age really appeal to the emotional aspect of this, but there is an emotional, moral aspect to it that cannot be ignored. So in socialism, the greedy majority uses the will and the power of the government to take from those that they want from to give to them. That is greedy whenever you use a bayonet to get what you want. Now, in capitalism, you must work for it yourself. That is not to say you will be guaranteed it, but you cannot use government, you cannot use cold hard steel to take legal plunder from another to give towards you. How do we see any discrepancy in, the greedy aspect of those two economic philosophies?
It's very well said.